Woman calls police for her husband, accused him of beating her. Turns out he is innocent. Have you ever felt that the person in your life that you truly loved could accuse you of something and on top of that, call the cops to arrest you? That is the case of Mr. Palmer West and Mrs. Debbie Woods, a couple that seemed perfect from the outside. Until that night. The sound of sirens pierced the stillness of the evening as Palmer stood in disbelief. His wife, Debbie, had called the police, accusing him of assault. Why would she do this? What could have driven her to make such a false claim? As the police cars screeched to a halt outside their home, Palmer's heart raced. He couldn't believe the situation was unfolding this way. How could someone you love turn against you so viciously? The officers rushed to the front door, and before he could even utter a word, Debbie screamed, "Arrest him! He hit me." Her voice was full of anguish, but Palmer knew the truth. "What are you talking about? I never touched you." Palmer stammered, his voice cracking from the shock. The officers didn't hesitate. One of them, with a steely gaze, ordered Palmer to put his hands up. "Stay still, sir. We don't want any trouble," the officer warned, inching closer with handcuffs. Palmer could feel the weight of injustice pressing down on him, his mind racing. Why was she lying? What had he done to deserve this? As Debbie pointed to a bruise on her arm, her face contorted with fake pain, Palmer realized that this was no accident. This was planned. But what she didn't know was that Palmer had installed CCTV cameras throughout the house weeks ago. Would it be enough to save him from this nightmare? The drama was palpable. Palmer's mind was a storm of fear, anger, and confusion. He wanted to scream, to tell the officers everything, but would they listen to him? A black man over his white wife? Here's the continuation of the story. Palmer's voice trembled as he spoke to the officers. "I swear I didn't touch her. You need to look at the cameras in the house. There's footage." The officers exchanged skeptical glances, but one of them, Officer Daniels, seemed willing to listen. "Cameras?" Daniels asked, his tone sharp but curious. Palmer nodded, trying to steady his breathing. "Yes, I installed them a few weeks ago. It records everything." But would they even bother to check? Would they care enough to dig deeper, or were they ready to condemn him on sight? Before the officers could respond, Debbie burst into a dramatic sob, clutching her arm. "You're really going to believe him?" she shrieked. "He's lying. Sure. Here's the continuation of the story. He's lying. He's always been violent." Debbie screamed, her voice filled with rage and desperation. The tension in the room was suffocating. How could she play this role so convincingly? Palmer could barely recognize the woman standing in front of him. Was this really the person he had shared his life with? The officers shifted uncomfortably, caught between the emotional plea of a seemingly battered woman and the composed yet desperate pleas of her husband. Palmer's heart pounded, each second feeling like an eternity. Was this it? Was he about to lose everything because of a lie? One officer placed his hand on Palmer's shoulder, ready to cuff him. Palmer's mind raced. "Please, check the cameras. You'll see I'm telling the truth," he pleaded again. He could feel the heavy air of suspicion pressing down on him. Would anyone believe him, a black man accused of domestic violence against his white wife? "Sir, we have procedures to follow," the officer said coldly. The handcuffs were inches from Palmer's wrists when Officer Daniels, the one who seemed more open-minded, finally spoke up. "Let's check the cameras," Daniels said. His partner shot him a look, but Daniels was firm. "We need to be sure. We can't make assumptions." Palmer felt a brief wave of relief wash over him, but he knew it wasn't over yet. Debbie's eyes widened. For a moment, her mask slipped. "You can't," she blurted out, panic creeping into her voice. I turned them off. They're not working." Palmer's gaze locked onto her, the truth hitting him hard. Why would she lie about the cameras if she was telling the truth? Daniels narrowed his eyes at her. "Let's see for ourselves," he said calmly but with authority. He motioned for his partner to stay with Debbie while he followed Palmer to the living room, where the CCTV monitor sat. Palmer could feel the weight of Debbie's stare on him as he walked away. What was going through her mind now? The house felt colder, eerier, as they approached the CCTV setup. Palmer's hands were shaking as he clicked through the footage. What if something went wrong? He couldn't help but wonder. What if the cameras malfunctioned? What if the footage was corrupted? His entire future hung on this slim chance. With a deep breath, he pulled up the footage from earlier that day. For a moment, nothing happened, and Palmer's heart sank. Was he about to lose it all because of a technical glitch? But then, the footage flickered to life. Clear as day, the video showed Debbie in their living room. She wasn't alone, though. She was holding something heavy, a small weight from their home gym. Palmer and Officer Daniels watched as Debbie deliberately slammed the weight against her arm, wincing in pain. She looked into the mirror for a second, as if inspecting her work. Satisfied, she picked up her phone and called the police, her voice filled with fake distress as she falsely accused Palmer of hitting her. The room was silent as the footage played. Could anyone have predicted this level of betrayal? Palmer's stomach twisted as he watched the woman he loved frame him with such cold calculation. He could see Officer Daniels' expression harden as he watched the evidence unfold. "Is this some kind of sick joke?" Officer Daniels muttered under his breath, his disbelief mirroring Palmer's. Palmer wiped a tear from his eye, trying to stay composed. "No," he replied quietly. "This is the reality I've been living in." Officer Daniels turned to Palmer, his face a mixture of shock and something else. Pity, perhaps. "We'll handle this," he said, his voice now more respectful. He clicked off the CCTV and walked back to the living room where Debbie was still waiting with the other officer. Palmer followed behind, feeling numb. What happens now? He thought. Could this nightmare finally be over? Debbie's eyes darted back and forth as Officer Daniels approached her. Her confidence was visibly shaken, and she clutched her arm again, as if she could somehow make the bruise look more real. Did she know the game was up? "Ma'am," Officer Daniels began, his voice ice cold. "We've reviewed the footage, and it's clear that you falsely accused your husband of assault. You're under arrest for filing a false police report and attempting to frame an innocent man." For a brief second, Debbie's face paled. She looked as if she might faint, her eyes wide with disbelief. No, you don't understand. He's lying. That footage is fake. He's controlling it," she screamed, but her words fell flat. The other officers weren't buying it anymore. The evidence was indisputable. One officer moved forward and began to cuff Debbie. "You can't do this to me, I'm the victim," she shrieked, but her pleas fell on deaf ears. How quickly the tables had turned. Palmer stood in the doorway, watching as the woman he once loved was led away in handcuffs. He didn't feel the satisfaction he thought he might. Instead, he just felt tired, exhausted from the emotional roller coaster of betrayal, accusation, and vindication. How had they gotten to this point? Palmer thought. How had his marriage fallen apart so tragically? As the officers escorted Debbie out of the house, she locked eyes with Palmer one last time. There was no love, no remorse in her gaze, only anger and hatred. She didn't even try to apologize. Instead, she spat out, "You'll pay for this, Palmer. You'll regret ever crossing me." Her words chilled him to the bone. Was this really the same woman he had once promised to spend his life with? The officers left with Debbie, and suddenly the house was silent again. Palmer stood there in the middle of the living room, the echoes of the chaos that had just unfolded reverberating in his mind. His life had been turned upside down in a matter of hours, but what now? If you've watched this far, leave a 100 in the comments section, because you are type of person that likes to finish what they started. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to get notified whenever we drop new videos. Now back to the story. Even though the truth had come out, the damage was done. Palmer knew his marriage was over. He felt an overwhelming sense of loss, not just for the relationship he thought he had, but for the trust and love that had been destroyed in the process. Could he ever trust someone like that again? The next few days passed in a blur. Debbie was charged with making a false police report and obstruction of justice. The media got hold of the story, and soon their personal tragedy was being splashed across the news. Palmer didn't care about the media attention. What haunted him more was the sense of betrayal that wouldn't go away. The woman he had loved had not only tried to ruin his life, but had done so without any remorse. How could someone be so cold, so manipulative? Every time Palmer passed the now empty living room where the CCTV footage had revealed the truth, he was reminded of the fragility of trust. He had installed those cameras to protect himself, But never in his wildest dreams had he imagined they would save him from the very person he had vowed to spend his life with. Would you ever imagine that the person you love could turn on you like this? Could you ever forgive someone for such a betrayal? Even though no one died that night, Palmer knew that something inside him had. The part of him that believed in unconditional love, the part that trusted without question, was gone. He would move on eventually, but things would never be the same. As the story spread, many questioned Palmer's decision to install those cameras in the first place. But he knew he had done the right thing. Without them, would anyone have believed him? The tragedy of his marriage may have been inevitable, but at least the truth had come out. The scars would remain, but Palmer would heal. Slowly. Painfully. But he would heal. What would you have done if you were in Palmer's shoes? Would you install cameras in your own home to protect yourself from potential betrayal? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one. Stories that make you think, question, and reflect.